Bret Hart's theme song, followed by a double dose of Lack of Fusion, two versions by two different bands, the same song, first by Genesis, then by Disturbed, and this is the Jay Red Show with the history of wrestling. As the 1980s boom came to an end, some fans started, as I said last time, fans started getting sick of all the old kiddie wrestlers, and they started to like newer wrestlers with more grit. Guys like The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Mr. Perfect, Razor Ramon, and the man you just heard, Bret Hart. Hart won the WWF title twice in the early 90s. Actually, before I get to that, at the 1992 30 King of the Ring, Yokozuna beat Hulk Hogan, and Hogan left the WWF. Bret Hart won the title from Yokozuna at WrestleMania 10 in 1994. And pretty much became the new face of the WWF, replacing Hulk Hogan. Hogan went on to do some movies and emerged in a company called World Championship Wrestling, WCW. Hogan won the WC title at the 1994 Bash at the Beach. Then in early 1995 was began the Monday Night War. In which the WCW's flagship show, Monday Night Nitro, was paired up with Monday Night Raw on the same time slot, and every week they would try to see who could draw the most ratings. However, this would lead to probably one of the most wild eras of professional wrestling history, and we will talk more about that when we get back to the music. First, we'll get back to the music. 585-343-9422. That is our number. 343-WGCC. You can listen to us online at www.wgcc-.com. And coming up is Slash with Anastasia. So keep it off the 9.7, the Music FM. Slash and Anastasia on 90.7, the Music FM. Now, this is the Jay Red Show, the history of wrestling. We have about 30 minutes left, and we're almost out of battery, so I'm going to try to quickly run through the rest of this. But anyhow, here's how it goes. In the mid-90s, WWF, Raw, and WCW Nitro would fight each other for ratings. And they would be going back and forth. However, the WCW decided to make a drastic move. In 1996, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, formerly Diesel and Razor Ramon in the WWF, came over to WCW, saying they were trying to take over the company. At Bash at the Beach 1996, Nash and Hall faced Macho Man, Sting, and Lex Luger. Then Hulk Hogan came out. Hulk Hogan, after 12 years of being an American hero, a beloved man by the kids and all, drops his leg on the Macho Man Randy Savage, turning heel for the first time in 12 years and aligning himself with Nash and Hall. They form a group called the New World Order, the NWO. And for a while, it was a success for WCW. As for 84 weeks in a row, they beat Raw in the ratings. One incident that happened in 1997 that really changed the tide of the war was the Montreal Screwjob. Bret Hart was supposed to leave for WCW. The problem is he was the WWF champion, and Mr. McMahon wanted him to lose the title to Shawn Michaels in Montreal. Problem is, Montreal was in Bret Hart's home country, Canada. He didn't want to lose the title then. He wanted to lose the title afterwards. So McMahon told Bret Hart that he would keep the title until after the Survivor Series. However, as Shawn Michaels puts the sharpshooter on Bret Hart, Earl Hebner calls for the bell. And even though Bret Hart never tapped out. This was a controversial moment in wrestling history called the Montreal Screwjob. This established Vince McMahon as a heel and the evil boss storyline, which would ultimately lead to the WWF's turnaround. Anyhow, more gritty characters started to rise through the Attitude Era, and as they got sick and tired, even though, as I said earlier, they got wrestling fans started falling more in love with gritty characters, there's still some kiddie characters like Doink the Clown and such. This era was called the New Generation era, which the 80s superstars left for WCW, and a new generation was coming up. The one guy who emerged was Rocky Maivia, Dwayne Johnson. He started off as a clean-cut babyface character, was pushed heavily from the start despite his wrestling experience. He is the son of Rocky Johnson and High Chief Peter Maivia, the grandson of High Chief Peter Maivia. Even though he was a clean-cut babyface, a lot of the fans booed him, and they said, "Die, Rocky, die," and Rocky sucks. However, The Rock then turned heel, joining a group called the Nation of Domination. This is where he changed his gimmick to The Rock. He insulted audiences with his promos. He would call Kevin Kelly an ugly hermaphrodite. He would cut his promo saying, "If you smell what The Rock is cooking," and yabba dabba. He pretty much changed his character to a more gritty character, and the fans started to like him, even though he was a heel. Although the man who really carried the company into the future, Stone Cold Steve Austin. At WrestleMania 14, Stone Cold Steve Austin defeated Shawn Michaels to become the WWF Champion. And this would start with something called the Attitude Era, which was pretty much a kid-friendly era with lots of obscene gestures, drinking, sexy girls who wear very little clothing, and it was pretty much edgy. Steve Austin started a feud with the evil Mr. McMahon, because storyline-wise, McMahon didn't like the way Austin did policy, by his drinking beer and his obscene gestures and such. And this started the McMahon-Austin feud. It was shortly after WrestleMania 14 when Austin won the title from Shawn Michaels, and Austin began wrestled McMahon in a match on Raw. And that match, after 84 weeks of losing to Nitro, Raw finally beat Nitro in the ratings. Raw and Nitro go back and forth to do the ratings war. And however, meanwhile in WCW, fans got sick of the NWO storyline. It was cool at first, but it started to drag on. As the NWO storyline brought in, they started bringing celebrities. For example, Bash at the Beach 1998. It was Diamond Dallas Page and Carl Malone versus Hollywood Hogan and Dennis Rodman. And then the very next pay-per-view of Road Wild, Hulk Hogan versus Hollywood Hogan and Eric Bischoff versus DDP and Jay Leno. That's right, from The Tonight Show. Meanwhile, WWF was delivering edgy TV and controversial TV, and speaking of which, there was another promotion delivering edgy TV called Extreme Championship Wrestling. ECW would use hardcore matches all the time. They'd use a lot of weapons. It was just crazy. So while the WWF and ECW was using crazy matches, WCW kind of stood in the 80s and put on the NWO. Anyhow, the turning point of Monday Night War was happened in early 1999. Before we get to the figure poker deal, let me explain what was about WrestleMania in 1998. The NWO split into two. You had Hollywood Hogan and leading the original NWO called NWO Hollywood. Then Kevin Nash kind of broke the NWO into two, leading a babyface NWO called NWO Wolfpack, who wore red. Meanwhile, with WCW, there was a man called Goldberg, who won his first 173 matches in a row. And he was hot with the fans. It was debated who was going to be snapped Goldberg's streak. Well, starting in 1998, it was Kevin Nash who beat Goldberg due to interference from Scott Hall. Storyline-wise, Hulk Hogan retired from wrestling and took a run for President of the United States in 2000. However, actually I was talking more about the Figure of Doom a little bit after this music break. But anyhow, coming up next is Welcome to the Jungle by Guns N' Roses, Q947, the Music FM. Welcome to the Jungle by Guns N' Roses on 90.7, the Music FM. Got about 15 minutes from the show, so I'm going to quickly run down from the Poke of Doom and what happens there. Well, as I said in the facts, I meant the NWO split into a babyface NWO Wolfpack led by Kevin Nash, then the black and white NWO heel by the original NWO by Hollywood Hogan, and Goldberg was undefeated until he faced Nash due to interference with Scott Hall. Goldberg was supposed to challenge Nash on January 4th, 1999 for a rematch. However, he got accused of aggravated stalking by Miss Elizabeth, and Goldberg went to jail. So Hogan came back to wrestling to challenge Nash for the title. Meanwhile, in the WWF, The Rock Mick Foley won the WWF Championship from The Rock. One strategy WCW Nitro were using against the WWF Raw was that Raw was taped. So Nitro and other show 5 minutes early, read the results of Raw beforehand, so they could and then pretty much spoil Raw so the fans could watch Nitro. Tony Schiavone mentioned that Mick Foley won the titles from The Rock. He said, yeah, they'll put some butts in some seats. But sure enough, it backfired. 600,000 fans changed the channel to watch Mick Foley and The Rock. As far as Hogan and Nash, well, Hogan poked Kevin Nash. Nash purposely laid down. Hogan pinned him 1, 2, 3 and won the title and unified the two NWOs. And remember what I said earlier, the fans were getting sick of the NWO storyline. They were getting sick of the old guys like Hogan and Nash being pushed over young talent like Guerrero and Benoit. That's another problem with this WCW. But anyhow, the finger poke of doom was that Raw beat Nitro in the ratings, and Nitro would never again beat Raw in the ratings. It was a combination of things that led to the downfall of WCW. But you could say the death nail was probably 2000 when David Arquette won the world title. In the year 2000, WCW made a movie called Ready to Rumble about a bunch of wrestling fans, one of them starring David Arquette, who helps the wrestler get back into the ring and win the WCW title. Arquette got put in the match with DDP in a tag team match against Jeff Jarrett and Eric Bischoff. And the stipulation was who got the pinfall win the title. David Arquette got the pinfall, and he won the championship. Ruining WCW, bringing his ratings out of the toilet, and on March 26, 2001, the WWF bought WCW. So what happened this storyline was the final cast of the final Nitro on Raw. Mr. McMahon came out saying he now owned WCW, and he was going to put all the WCW wrestlers on the show. However, his son, Shane McMahon, came out saying that he went on this cover and he now owned WCW. So this was supposed to start off the granddaddy of all wrestling storylines, Invasion. At WrestleMania 17, a week after the March 26, 2001, Stone Cold Steve Austin beat The Rock for the WWF title. After years of feuding with Vince McMahon helped Austin. Austin McMahon shook hands. Austin turned heel, and now it's pretty much the end of the Attitude Era. And now on to the Invasion. The original plan for the Invasion angle was WCW was supposed to stay on TNN, have its own show, and pretty much continue as usual. However, they couldn't work out a deal with TNN, so they instead decided to have WCW take over either Raw or its secondary show, SmackDown. So have either Raw, which was aired on Thursdays. So either have Raw be a WWF show or SmackDown be a WCW show, and vice versa. To test the waters with this, they would have WCW matches on Raw and SmackDown. The most infamous was Booker T versus Buff Bagwell for the WCW title. The fans hated the match. They booed it. They said it sucked. Vince McMahon hated the match. And so it was decided that WCW was going to be a heel group. This was established when Diamond Dallas Page was stalking The Undertaker's then wife, Sarah. So, being a pervert now. So, Shane McMahon wanted to stand up to DDP, Shane McMahon was a babyface at the time, wanted to stand up to DDP and stop him. Undertaker came out, but Shane McMahon attacked Undertaker with a kendo stick, and pretty much turned him and WCW heel, as it was all revealed to be a trap set by the entire WCW roster, who was assigned by WCW at the time. Later that night, Kane and Jericho were in the tag team match against WCW's Lance Storm and Mike Awesome, when Rob Van Dam and Tommy Dreamer came out of ECW. More ECW alumni came out: Taz, Dudley Boys, Raven, all of them were together at the time. They turned on Jericho and Taz. They turned on Jericho and Kane, and the line in the cell was ECW. Paul Heyman, who was the color commentator at the time, who was the owner of the original ECW,